The main corridor of the apartment building was unusually cold that evening. Maeve had lived in 4D for nearly 6 years and could not remember the lights ever flickering so consistently or the floorboards echoing quite so sharply. The building, an aging brick complex from the 1950s, had always been a bit drafty, its charm resting more in familiarity than quality. But lately, strange things had begun to creep into her daily routine. Her keys found in impossible places. A phone she didn't own ringing softly behind vents. Whispers too distant to make out, but close enough to chase reason into doubt. Tonight, as she returned from work, she noticed her neighbor's door, 3F, was ajar. She and Mrs. Sunderland hadn't spoken in months, though there'd never been any animosity. She paused, staring down the dim hallway. The darkness behind 3F's door was total. A sour scent, like burnt paper and copper, wafted out into the corridor. Maeve hesitated before gently nudging the door open with the tip of her shoe. It creaked like something long forgotten. The apartment inside was pitch black, the windows evidently covered or boarded. As her eyes adjusted, she noticed the distinct absence of furniture, just black bags lined along one wall, bulging with shapes too irregular to be clothing. She moved deeper in, reminded of an old cellar she used to hide in as a child, the air here thick and past its expiration. Just as she reached what looked like a torn photo on the floor, she heard it, a scraping sound, like nails trailing across the wall, beginning softly, then growing lumbering and intentional. She spun, heart a piston in her chest, but there was no one there. Only shadows ached in place. She picked up the photo without realizing, her thumb smearing a face, her own, from what looked like a Polaroid taken through her window, 3 stories up. Back in her apartment, Maeve locked the door and pushed a chair beneath the knob. She double-checked the windows, examined her closets, even looked under her bed, things she hadn't done since her teen years, when the world had more monsters than facts. The photo sat on the table, curling at the edges as though trying to rid itself of her presence. She mulled over calling the police, but what would she tell them? That a woman she hadn't spoken to in months had a picture of her, taken from an angle inside her apartment, and now her own keys had been ending up in the freezer? She sat beside the window, watching the corridor through the glass of her peephole, but the light outside had dimmed again. She saw movement, quick, distracted, near 5B. A boy-shaped figure stood hunched over the doormat, touching it with long fingers. Then it stood up too straight, too sudden, and vanished into nothing. Sleep didn't come. When Maeve blinked, she saw pale faces pressed between the slats of her closet doors. When she closed her ears with a pillow, she heard slow footsteps pacing from her bathroom to the kitchen as though she weren't there at all. When morning finally painted the world false orange, she got up and dared to open her door. The corridor greeted her in silence, empty and harmless. She took 3 steps before stopping short. Hundreds of photographs had been slipped under each apartment door. They spilled across the floor like a fan of feathers, all black and white, all showing intimate, impossible moments. People sleeping, people showering, people arguing behind drawn curtains. And each photo had a date written in the corner. Maeve's stack was thicker than the others, and pegged to the top with a rusted pin was a picture of her sleeping just 2 hours ago. The angle could only have been possible from inside her bedroom. The building's superintendent, Mr. Kwan, was visibly shaken when she showed him the photographs. In his 7 years overseeing the place, he'd never seen anything like it. He promised to check security footage, but when he returned, he looked pale. "You need to go," he whispered, as if the walls could hear. "Right now." When pressed, he handed her a page torn from a faded manual, its typewritten ink smeared in places. It described the architectural layout of the building, with one critical discrepancy. Behind the western wall of Maeve's unit, where her coat closet rested, was a narrow maintenance crawlspace that ran the length of the floor. It wasn't on any modern blueprint but had been part of the original structure. She asked if it was accessible. Mr. Kwan didn't answer. Instead, he stared too long at something behind her and then closed his office door without saying another word. That night, restless and weary, Maeve decided to test a theory. She placed a glass of water on the edge of her nightstand so delicately that the smallest vibration could tip it. Then she set up her living room lamp on a timer to turn on at exactly 3:17 a.m., the precise moment she always woke up feeling watched. She lay in bed with one eye open until sleep smothered it shut. Hours later, the light clicked on. She sat up immediately and looked at the glass. It was gone. Not spilled, not broken, simply gone. Her closet door, closed with certainty before bed, now stood open half an inch. Inside, only her coats. But at their feet, tucked neatly like a child's toy, was a bundle of black hair tied with a ribbon, wet and smelling faintly of mildew and iron. The next day, Maeve packed hastily, deciding nothing was worth the silent violation she felt pressing in from every corner of her apartment. But when she reached for her wallet on the kitchen table, she saw something else. Her entire keyring, midair for a fraction of a second, then falling straight down as if dropped. No one had been near it. There was no shelf above, no open cupboard, nothing. She felt a hush move through the air like someone exhaling behind her ear. Turning slowly, she found herself looking into the kitchen window. Except, her reflection wasn't mimicking her. It smiled, and lifted something in its hand.